It begins in a stadium far too big for his age. A boy walks into the light. Not a young man polished by years of professional training, but a teenager whose face still carries the softness of childhood. 80,000 people rise to their feet. Cameras tilt downward, searching for the source of something unusual, a calmness that feels impossible for someone who has barely lived long enough to understand the weight of expectation. And a quiet question spreads through European football. How does a 16-year-old become the calmest person in the stadium? Lamine Yamal was born in 2007 in Esplugues de Llobregat, a small corner of Catalonia where cultures intersect and identities blend. His father from Morocco, his mother from Equatorial Guinea, two worlds converging into one child who would grow up in a Barcelona that was changing as fast as he was. La Masia didn't shape him into a star. It simply gave structure to something that was already forming on its own. He wasn't the loudest talent. He wasn't even the most explosive. What made him different was simpler. The game slowed down for him. While other kids sprinted, he waited. While others pushed forward with force, he slipped through with timing. He played football like someone who already knew the ending, patient, efficient, stripped of noise.
Which leads to the mystery at the center of his rise. How does a teenager become the most trusted left foot in Barcelona before he's even allowed to drive a car? The answer starts during a period when Barcelona was fractured. Financial instability, political tension, injuries, departures. The club was desperate for stability, for something untainted by the chaos that had swallowed the institution. When Yamal appeared, he didn't arrive as a sensation. He arrived as a solution. A vacuum had formed, and he stepped into it without flinching. Veterans were sidelined, new signings struggled to adapt, and the tactical system demanded a player who could read space like a language. Lamy didn't just fit the system, he completed it. And the strangest part wasn't his talent, but his composure. No nerves, no hesitation. A quiet, almost unsettling stillness. People who know him privately mention the same detail. He doesn't rush. His movements are measured, his voice soft, his demeanor controlled. It's not arrogance, it's presence, the kind that makes everything around him feel slightly slower, slightly clearer. In an era obsessed with highlight reels, Yamal plays like someone uninterested in spectacle. He prefers inevitability. And that's where the contradiction hides. Why doesn't he feel the fear that destroys players twice his age?
The truth is surprisingly simple. Lamine Yamal isn't playing ahead of his age. Football itself has changed. The modern game is tighter, more tactical, more cerebral. It rewards intelligence over strength, insight over speed, thought over theatrics. He didn't arrive early. We arrived late. His rise reveals something uncomfortable about the sport. In a world desperate for heroes, we often turn children into symbols because the adults have failed us. Lamine is extraordinary, yes, but he is also a mirror reflecting football's neediness, its reliance on youth to rescue it from financial collapse and fading identity. Maybe we shouldn't be asking how good he will become. Maybe we should be asking why the game needed a boy this badly. And so we return to that first moment. A stadium too large, a child too young, a silence too heavy. He receives the ball. One touch. The pitch slows down. Possibility expands, as if the future itself has paused to watch. He isn't stepping into greatness. Greatness is stepping toward him. And as the season unfolds, something subtle begins to happen. Opponents stop seeing him as the kid on the wing. They start adjusting entire defensive structures around him, doubling, crowding, delaying. Not because of what he's done, but because of what they suspect he might do next. There's a kind of fear that only the unknown can create, and Lamine Yamal lives inside that uncertainty. Not a finished product, not a defined star, a moving question with boots on. Barcelona, a club drowning in its own expectations, suddenly finds itself orbiting around a teenager. Every journalist wants a narrative. Every fan wants a prophecy. Every coach wants assurance that this rise is real, not another fleeting spark in a sport full of false dawns. But Yamal gives them almost nothing to work with. He doesn't deliver dramatic interviews. He doesn't posture or sell himself as the next savior. He moves through press zones with that same quiet presence, head slightly down, steps unhurried, as if he's still listening to the rhythm of the match long after it's ended. And maybe that's the point. Football, for him, isn't noise. It's alignment. When he cuts inside, there's no panic. When he threads a pass through a wall of defenders, there's no celebration. Just a small exhale, a reset, a return to neutrality, like an artist wiping the brush clean before the next stroke. The contradiction grows deeper. How can someone so young carry so much expectation without showing the strain? This is where his story takes its quiet turn. Those close to him say Lamine has always lived slightly apart from the world. Not distant, just detached enough to see things differently. They describe a boy who observes more than he speaks, who studies patterns in silence, who absorbs pressure the way deep water absorbs sound. And that trait, that inner stillness, may be the real superpower. Because in a sport fueled by chaos, noise, and constant motion, Yamal thrives in the spaces in between, the tiny pauses, the hidden angles, the moments everyone else overlooks. He plays like someone who understands that time on a football pitch isn't fixed, it's elastic, shapeable, bendable. And when you watch him long enough, you start to wonder if the game slows down for him, or if he slows down the game. Zoom out far enough, and his rise becomes more than a football story. It becomes a study of how talent emerges when the world least expects it. How pressure can either shatter you or sculpt you. How football, at its core, is still ruled by instinct, the kind you can't teach or measure or predict. Lamine Yamal is not the next Messi, not the next Barcelona icon, not a replacement for the legends he grew up watching. He is something stranger, quieter, more fluid. A player who arrived not with a declaration, but with a question. What if the future of football belongs to those who make the game slower, not faster? And somewhere in the low hum of a stadium he's still getting used to, that question echoes as he touches the ball again. One touch, calm, measured, unbothered. A reminder that sometimes greatness doesn't come crashing into the world. Sometimes it enters silently and waits for the world to realize it's there. And as the months pass, the world begins to adjust to him, slowly, reluctantly. Commentators reach for metaphors that never quite capture the simplicity of what he does. Analysts dissect his decisions frame by frame, searching for mathematical explanations for something that feels more like intuition than design. But the more they analyze him, the more one truth emerges. Lamine Yamal doesn't play to dominate. He plays to solve. Watch closely and you'll see it. Before receiving the ball, he's already scanned the field. Once, twice, sometimes 3 times. Not searching for a gap, but for a sequence. a chain reaction waiting to be started. And when he finally moves, the decision looks obvious, inevitable, almost simple. That's the trick. He makes complexity disappear. Barcelona's veterans start trusting him in ways that feel almost unnatural. A defender under pressure looks up and finds the teenager offering himself as the calmest option on the pitch. A midfielder trapped between two markers releases the ball into a tight space, knowing Yamal will open it.
Step by step, pass by pass, he becomes the quiet architecture of the team. Not the face of the club, not the story, the structure. And yet, underneath this rise, there's a shadow nobody talks about, because every prodigy carries a hidden cost, expectation that grows faster than experience. The world does not wait for children to mature. It demands perfection, now, tomorrow, forever. And for the first time, a real tension forms around him. Can someone stay this calm when the entire world demands that he becomes something louder? The pressure doesn't come from failure, it comes from potential, the kind that stretches out in front of him like a horizon he hasn't reached yet. Coaches protect him, fans worship him, media circles him like a slow tide. But Lamine stays untouched, orbiting outside the noise. Training, playing, adjusting, learning. A teenager navigating a world that treats him like a myth.
And maybe that's why his story feels different from the usual prodigy tale. There's no visible hunger for spotlight, no desperation for legacy, no performative ambition. Just a boy who understands the game at a depth most adults never reach, and who carries that understanding with an ease that feels almost unsettling. As he walks off the pitch after another night of flawless decisions, he doesn't raise his hands to the crowd. He doesn't smile for the cameras. He doesn't savor the moment. He just lowers his head slightly and keeps walking, as if the real work begins once the noise fades. Some players make football look difficult. Some make it look easy. But a rare few, the ones time slows down for, make it look inevitable. And somewhere in that inevitability, in that quiet control, you begin to understand the truth that's been hiding inside his story all along. Lamine Yamal is not racing toward greatness. He's letting greatness catch up to him.
And then comes the moment every rising star eventually faces. The night when the world stops wondering if he's real and starts accepting that he is. It doesn't happen with a spectacular goal. It doesn't need to. It happens in the small things, the touches that calm a frantic match, the passes that thread between impossible lines, the decisions made in a heartbeat that reveal a mind moving seconds ahead of everyone else. On one of those nights, Barcelona clings to control as the clock runs down. Chaos presses in from every direction. The stadium trembles under the weight of anxiety. And the ball finds him. 16 years old, cold night air, thousands holding their breath. He doesn't panic, he doesn't rush. He does the simplest thing, the thing nobody else thought to do. A slow turn, a measured pass, a release of tension so gentle it feels almost poetic. In that instant, the energy of the match changes. The fear dissolves. The stadium, huge, restless, demanding, exhales. And with it, something becomes clear. Lamine Yamal isn't here to chase the moment. He's here to steady it. And then comes the moment every rising star eventually faces. The night when the world stops wondering if he's real and starts accepting that he is. It doesn't happen with a spectacular goal. It doesn't need to. It happens in the small things, the touches that calm a frantic match, the passes that thread between impossible lines, the decisions made in a heartbeat that reveal a mind moving seconds ahead of everyone else. On one of those nights, Barcelona clings to control as the clock runs down. Chaos presses in from every direction. The stadium trembles under the weight of anxiety. And the ball finds him. 16 years old, cold night air, thousands holding their breath. He doesn't panic, he doesn't rush. He does the simplest thing, the thing nobody else thought to do. A slow turn, a measured pass, a release of tension so gentle it feels almost poetic. In that instant, the energy of the match changes, the fear dissolves. The stadium, huge, restless, demanding, exhales. And with it, something becomes clear. Lamine Yamal isn't here to chase the moment. He's here to steady it. As the final whistle blows, the crowd roars. Teammates embraced him. The cameras follow his every move. But he slips through the noise quietly, almost unnoticed, as if he's already thinking about the next match, the next decision, the next small detail that no one else will see. There's no dramatic quote in the press conference, no boast, no proclamation of destiny. Just a boy standing beneath bright lights, answering questions with the same calm that defines his game. The world wants a myth. He offers reality. Understated, grounded, precise. And maybe that's the lesson hidden inside his rise. Greatness doesn't always arrive with explosions or declarations. Sometimes it appears in silence, in the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to announce anything. Someone who lets the game speak for him. Someone who understands that the future cannot be forced, only followed. As we pull back from his story, from the stadiums and the headlines and the pressure he carries with unnatural ease, the final image sharpens. A young boy walking across a dark pitch, boots echoing lightly against the grass, unbothered by the size of the world waiting for him. And in that lonely walk, slow, steady, unhurried, we return to the very question that started all of this. How does a teenager become the calmest person in the stadium? Maybe the answer is simple. Maybe he isn't calm because he's fearless. Maybe he's calm because he already knows who he is, and the world is only just beginning to learn it. Lamine Yamal disappears into the tunnel. The lights fade, the noise dissolves, and the future follows quietly behind him.